I'll sit behind the wall. He gets up and starts swinging. I want to be behind him.
No, talking before Mark.
The younger generation.
Where's our tone and
No, that's just, that would just be it. That would just be that mode.
Paul, does any of this include the passenger development out there?
I don't know, that's a good question.
Okay.
I just got this myself.
You gotta move your mic about that farther back. Your mic. About that much farther back, and everybody else has gotta move it about that much. Yeah. You could hear any of them.
What battery is on that?
It's 6:30, and let's go ahead and start the town hall meeting for the paving project. And I'd like to say thank you for all the citizens that have come to the meeting tonight to have the discussion and carry on a dialogue about the way ahead that we would like to have for our city streets and upgrading them. We also have people that are online, and I think that they will be able to take and submit questions as we get towards the end of this also, so that we can take and pull them up on the computer here, and also get those online citizens an ability to take and ask and then answer the questions for them. So I just wanted to take and kind of set the stage here that Dave has got the street portfolio for the City Commission. We've been working for a number of months with AE2S, our city engineering firm, to take and determine the needs of the streets and the upgrades that we need to have available. So that's going to be the main part of the discussion tonight. And I also see that Tom's here representing the Trail County Commission. We also have had a chance to go over and talk to the County Commission about the potential for helping with Caledonia Avenue. So I just wanted to put that out there, not to put Tom on the spot like I did, but you know, we did have a discussion. And Dave, as the portfolio holder of the portfolio, you want to say anything to kind of kick it off?
Just thanks for everybody showing up and to come and exchange ideas. And this is going to be a big project, and it's your town, and we appreciate your input.
And we appreciate Cole the Banner coming tonight too and covering this. I think it's an important part for us to go forward. So now I'd like to take and introduce Steve. Steve is our city engineer. He has had Tyler basically be the lead for this. Taylor to be the lead for this, to take and do the assessment, and then also to come up with the plan to take and redo it. So Taylor, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm going to kind of talk with my back to you guys. Maybe I'll dance around here a little bit. But on the screens, you can see the map of the proposed improvements. And then partway through here, I'll have Ashley actually switch to the handout that you guys all have. For those that are online, they can see it as well. Here's some handouts for you guys. So a little history of the project. In August of last year, we came down to Hillsboro and drove through the city, met with Jim, John, and other city staff to kind of do a pavement evaluation to see the condition of the streets in town. In doing that, we utilized the software, Paver 7 software. It's the industry standard in regards to determining pavement condition. And with that, you go through and you complete a field inspection of the streets, random samples, random selections, and you end up monitoring, measuring, and recording the various distresses. So actually, Ashley, if you want to switch over to the handout, and we'll kind of run through that. So the common distresses, weathering, block cracking, alligator cracking, and rutting were the major contributors here in town to reducing the PCI, or pavement condition index. So throughout town, the areas observed, the worst that we saw was a PCI rating of 18. This is on a scale of 0 to 100. 100 obviously being the best. And the best that we observed was 89. So that's from serious to good. Most of the network is actually in the fair category, which is the 70 to 56 PCI rating. And that's still a category that allows you to benefit from maintenance. It hasn't deteriorated so far that you have to do rehabilitation, which is encouraging. Other observations were that some of the street segments in town either don't have a crown or a slope to your road, a cross section if you will, or some areas even have what I would consider a negative crown, where you're holding water in the middle of the street, water being the enemy of pavement sections. There were a handful of areas that had underlying structural issues. Those have caused more significant failures, and the quantity was estimated to do a full depth repair in those areas where the pavement has failed. In general, throughout town, I would say the curb and gutter is flat. There isn't great drainage just due to being here in the Red River Valley. Our predecessors didn't give us a whole lot of elevation to work with, and which is unfortunate. We aren't currently planning on doing a significant component of curb and gutter replacement. It would be focusing on areas that have failed or have some type of structural failure. The intent of this project would be to reestablish the crown of the road and get that water out to the curb and gutter. And then most of it will flow away. You will have some ponding or residual water staying there that would have to evaporate away. And then the other observation was just, other than Caledonia, there's very few ADA ramps throughout town. And when you do a project that is anything more than a chip seal or minor maintenance, ADA requirements are that all the sidewalks anywhere that cross the street have to be brought into compliance with ADA requirements. So those were some observations of the existing conditions. So what does that mean? I guess if you were to jump to the bottom portion of the handout under project information, you can see there, taking all these improvements that would need to be done, we came up with a project estimate in the range of $12 million. So a significant project, obviously. The little asterisk there will show you that that does also include a 15% contingency. When we do these estimates, we use previous bid openings, DOT bid, average bid prices, and stuff like that to come up with our unit prices and the project cost. So that contingency accounts for some of that. It also accounts for any inflation or change in prices that may have taken place since the previous year's bidding. Based on the current economy, 15% may unfortunately be a little bit light. It's hard to say. That also has 8% for engineering design, 7% would be like the field administration or construction services of the project, and then 5% for legal and administrative with regards to assessments, invoices, kind of all that aspect of the project. So the 12 million is estimated to be the out the door price. There's not anything additional on top of that.
And Taylor, for a comparison, could you take and talk about the cost to Larimore on theirs? As a city commission, we've been trying to keep this as affordable as possible, but for a comparison, can you talk a little bit about a previous project in Larimore?
Well, and that one currently, so Larimore is going through a citywide project. Right now it's the utility portion, so they're doing water, sewer, and storm sewer, sanitary and storm sewer throughout town. And to be honest, they haven't even bid the paving portion of it yet. So just the underground work of that was, I believe, 15 million. And I anticipate the streets are gonna be that again, you know, especially since it won't be until, it may be designed this year with a 2023 construction, so it would be pretty comparable. They won't have any prep work or anything. All the aggregate for there is already part of the current project. You know, so if they come in at 12 to 15 million, that's pavement only. So that's just kind of a neighbor in the valley, if you will, to the city of Hillsboro, and something that they have ongoing. So the improvements, like I said, with that fair pavement condition rating, the maintenance of doing a mill and overlay is still something that is recommended by the industry. Once you start getting below that fair condition, mill and overlay likely isn't going to be adequate to solve the problems. There's likely some underlying issues or some structural components to your base or your subgrade that are causing those failures. So the paving improvements, the majority of it includes a 2-inch mill and overlay. Areas where there's that negative crown or flat cross section to the road, we have proposed to just do an edge mill to tie into the existing curb and gutter, and then we would actually basically do 2 courses of overlay to reestablish the crown, get a 2% minimum cross slope to get that water out to your curb and gutter. That's primarily on Caledonia. I believe there's a few other areas throughout town that we identified that as well. And then, like I said, the areas that received worse than fair PCI ratings, those would likely be the full depth pavement replacement, where we dig down, excavate some of that non-suitable material, put in fabric, a gravel base section, and then a thicker pavement section to handle that. We don't have major areas of that, like blocks on end identified, but we do have the quantity to do the equivalent of, I believe, 3 blocks throughout town, because all of these areas, my observation was that they seemed fairly isolated, and it might be 100 feet for half the street or something along that through various locations throughout town. In addition, talking with Dave and Terry and Jim as well, we also identified at this point it would be good to potentially investigate or include, I should say, citywide signage, replace stop signs along Caledonia, and replace street signs throughout the entire town. That's included in this. The ADA improvements that I talked about, so that would be to bring every existing sidewalk that crosses any of the streets in town that currently do not have ADA ramps, to bring those into compliance with ADA regulations. There are a couple areas identified for storm sewer extension. Those also would receive the full depth pavement improvements because we'd be digging in the street there. And those can be shown on the map. We'll switch back to that here in a couple minutes again. So I believe there's 3 areas in town, in the southeast corner, up closer to the school or hospital, and then one over by the county building, where we would extend the existing storm sewer network an additional block to get inlets at intersections that are problematic based on city staff observations. And then the last component within that 12 million is there is the bituminous paving of a couple, what I have listed in here as rural sections throughout town. So one would be South Main to get down to, I believe the Township Road, if I'm not mistaken, or is that county?
No,
On the
that's
west side of the
Township.
tracks.
Township.
And then also, the frontage roads out on the west side of town, those are included to pave those as a bituminous rural section. So there wouldn't be curb and gutter on those, but to pave them, so that they're no longer gravel sections. And kind of as Terry had alluded, you know, we are also trying to keep our finger on the pulse for any grants or any cost sharing alternatives that are out there. We thought there was gonna be something coming down with this IIJA, funding that extra $500 billion. Unfortunately, none of that seems to have trickled down to the city level with regards to street projects. So that was a bit disheartening when we learned that a month or so ago. So currently that $12 million would be assessed citywide is what the discussion is. And that's kind of the middle portion, if Ashley, if you were able to scroll up just a little bit, where it talks about the example assessment. So we just took two different samples, basically.
Taylor, before you go there, could you take and
Yes.
talk about the new paving substrat, or the, you know, it's gonna be a new improved paving material? Can you just let everybody know that we're looking at some pretty good material that would go into this too, so that it's gonna be more durable?
Yeah, so it's what the DOT has been using for a couple of years now, but it's called an FAA fine angularity aggregate, something along those lines. But it is a better performing aggregate within the bituminous mix. So generally your street sections are holding up better with this, and it's, you know, it's stuff they started using out west is when I first experienced it, out in the oil boom and in the Bakken. So it's a pretty resilient aggregate mix that we're using, as opposed to the old Marshall blend, which has higher oil content, and there's less structure that seems to be with that aggregate mix. So good question.
Thank you.
So what a lot of people are probably concerned with is, what does this mean for me and what's it gonna cost? So we just took two sample assessments. So currently, throughout town, I believe there are 3 assessments that are all set to expire here in 2022. Something associated with Highway 200, water main project, and then also the previous paving project. So we took examples for a standard lot, or a lot that's not on a corner, 75-foot frontage. The existing easement you can see there is approximately $46 a month, or existing assessment, sorry. If this 12 million were to be assessed based on how the previous paving project was assessed, that $46 a month would expire the end of this year, and then this project would be assessed at $62 a month if you had a 75-foot frontage on a non-corner lot. The corner lot, the existing assessments for the Highway 200, the water main, and the street project is about $55 a month. And with the way the formula works out based on how the previous street project was completed, that would end up being about an $89 a month assessment, which when we get through the area in the blue on the right, you'll see would go into place in 2024. So I mean, we're not talking pocket change. It is substantial increase, but again, the 55 would go away, so there's that. And then I just have my little disclaimer in there that these are estimates. There's a lot of variables with regards to assessments, in regards to, you know, if the project actually comes in lower than estimated, the assessment costs are going to be less. If the assessment district were to choose some different formula as to how it would be applied, it could increase or decrease based on that. So, any questions currently that I could address from either the commission or anyone in the audience?
Yes, you're gonna put all this money into the roads, but what about all these construction guys going by? You know, they've been breaking up my road with a new addition of Jordals. And then we finally did fix it up again. I'm satisfied, but you got a lot of machines coming across. We're gonna have a good, you know, that's another concern of mine.
Okay.
And then, of course, because of the cost of living right now, we're getting hit hard with this. Gas and groceries and, you know,
Okay, I guess I don't have an answer currently, but that's part of tonight is, you know, to receive the questions from those who are present and you know, consider them, find the answers, and, you know, potentially have an additional meeting, to discuss them, so.
Thank you.
I know Steve's over here taking questions on behalf, or making notes, so I don't have to while I'm up here, so, thank you.
And I think to add to that, yeah, we're feeling the pain too. Inflation's probably gonna be pretty tough this year until we can kind of get back to normal. And gas and diesel obviously is gonna probably drive up the prices for what we're estimating is gonna be going into this. As far as the construction equipment, you're talking about specifically what they're doing with the Jordal project has been breaking up some of the streets over your way. And hopefully they're gonna be, you know, that project this summer. And again, we're talking about next year is when we plan on having this paving construction project come into play. So I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed that Jordal will continue to finish up his projects over there. And the new pavement, I think, again, being more resilient, if we do go into that 2023 timeframe, I think will help. But we obviously have talked as a commission about how expensive it is and how these prices will probably get inflated over this next year too. So I don't have an answer for you, but we have taken that into consideration.
but does, like Jordal, does he have to pay for any of these?
I wish.
I do too.
I'll let Ashley work that one.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I have a couple questions here for you. One of them is.
Rick, could you take and say your name so the people
Oh,
out
I'm
there-
sorry, I'm Rick Nelson. From Don Hatfield. Anyway, I have two questions for you. One of them is what all is included, and you have a list of 15% contingency, 8%, they can all read their own. But that comes to like 35% of the project. And just a rough estimate, isn't that like 4.2 million of the project? Am I
Yeah.
right? So it's, what's the chances of that being reduced at all? I'm asking, that's just one of my questions so far.
Okay.
That's a lot of money.
Yep. So the 15%, I mean, that's to kind of just, when you're doing these assessment projects, if you go through all this work and the project ends up coming in over what the estimate is, or the 12 million in this case, if I recall, and legal may be able to confirm this quicker, but I think that automatically kicks the project out or makes it a non-project, or a project that can't proceed, I should say. So quite often you'll have those contingencies built into it so that it doesn't exceed that, and all these assessment discussions are taking place with what everyone has basically agreed to as the worst case or most expensive option to it. You know, if the design goes better or the construction services go better, you know, it won't be the 7 or the 8%. If everything goes good with regards to the assessment and the administrative and legal aspect of it, that might not be the 5%, but those are just kind of industry standards that quite often get used at this preliminary stage of a project.
Like, the contingencies includes either, you know, like I said, either bidding going over, or if there's other things found in the field during construction, if other items are added on, or if you come across a lot more curb and gutter that needs to be replaced or something.
But if all things were to be the same, that's still $4.2 million. Am I correct? That's my question. On a $12 million project, it's over 1/3 of the project.
Yep, just over a third.
Yeah. And my second question is, you're talking about this new aggregate and stuff, that it holds up better, but how much better? What's it, you know, you're just saying, well, we found that it holds up better. Well, how much? Because if I look at the streets when they were done the last time here in town, we had water puddles standing all over, stuff wearing out right away. So how much longer are the taxpayers, should they expect these streets to last? Because the last time, it hasn't been that great. We had water standing all over, ponding, and I'd like to, rather than just tell us something, that it holds up. How much?
Okay.
You should have some figure on that. I'm just asking.
Yep, I'll do some digging into that to see, to try and get you actual numbers or statistics behind that, so certainly.
And how long, I guess I had another question, I'm sorry. But how much longer, or how long do you anticipate, or Terry, maybe you know, or any one of the commissioners, are these extra specials, how long are they gonna be on the taxpayers' backs here?
So this is,
Without any grants or anything coming in? How long will that be on that?
these numbers are for a 20-year assessment.
What, you'll have that for 20 years?
Yep.
And what if we have other ongoing projects? What's that gonna do to the taxpayers in town? This is a big thing. There's a lot of elderly people in town, and they're subjected to all kinds of costs on various things in the city. And how much tighter will the commissioners tighten up their belts on various projects so they don't add additional costs to the people in this city? That's my four questions.
And just to jump in real quick, Rick, those are all good questions. And again, the 20-year time span, and if there's other opportunities for, say, funding to come up that could be applied to this, then I think as a commission, we would take a look at trying to take and utilize those funds. Obviously, our senior citizens on fixed incomes is a big concern that we do have, and we have been, I think, pretty diligent about raising issues about spending money that, you know, could possibly be utilized in a more efficient manner. But there's no guarantees. But obviously, the infrastructure with the streets is a big part of, you know, the citizens being able to have easy throughput and some of those things. It is good for our commerce and being able to do it. So I think, again, I don't want to speak for the whole commission, but from my perspective, we would be looking at trying to maintain the tax advantages, the low taxes that we've kind of had in the past and going forward. So, but there could be other pots of money and that we would look at. And depending upon how the state, you know, funding comes, you know, we're getting a lot of money coming in from the oil fields right now that are going into the coffers. That, you know, how is the state going to spend some of that? Maybe buy down some of our debt and stuff too, is something that we'll obviously look into.
Thank you, Terry.
So if there's poor workmanship, like what happened last time,
Sir, could I have you just mention your name and?
Mike Wright from Hillsboro here. If there's poor workmanship, like there was the last paving project, where the asphalt was put down cold, didn't stick, the manholes weren't lifted to the level of the street, and the gate valve's not done, everything's like a pothole, who's responsible for that?
That would be the contractor's responsibility within the warranty period. So when you're saying, you know, if the asphalt was laid down cold, and I would assume that means that it potentially raveled or peeled off, experience has generally been that that will take place within the first year. I don't know, was that the case? I mean, were these areas
It
within a
was-
year?
Yes, and a lot of it like immediately afterwards.
Yeah, so that's the, you know, the contractor has a performance and payment bond that they have to provide, usually in the amount of 5%. That kinda, I mean, that holds some weight. Also, the, you know, for the field staff to ensure that you're out there taking tickets, checking temps, and making sure that everything's is within the specifications so that doesn't happen, so.
Who was in charge of that last time?
I believe that was an AE2S project.
How come that wasn't pursued then?
I'm not sure. I was in our Williston office at the time. Not an excuse, but
And Mike, you did raise a great question there, and I know Jim and his team over there at Public Works are concerned about the snow plowing and getting across some of those covers and stuff is a major problem for them right now. And I don't know, Jim, if you want to say anything, but that was a key component for us to be able to start to look at the engineering.
We would rather have a pothole than a cover that's gonna, as much as things expand and push up, we would rather have a hole there than something come up to where we
But
sheared off.
8 inches on a lot of them is a little excessive, that's like a pothole.
I'm sorry?
8 inches low from the street level is excessive. I mean, you have to drive like a drunk person to avoid all those
I
potholes.
guess, I haven't seen 8-inch drop, Mike. If you could,
We can put a stick across them and I can
you could
show
point
you.
those out to me, we could look at those, but I
There's
haven't
like
seen an
a
8-inch
dozen of
drop.
them on the way down to my house.
And where we live, it's a freeze and thaw,
That I understand.
Environment,
This
there-
was bad right
there's-
from the get-go.
yeah. And as far as the water ponding, like Taylor mentioned, we have no drainage in town. I mean, there's areas where there's 6 blocks that the water has to travel. I mean, we just have to live with that and do the best we can. And we fight that all the time too. Driveways sink, you know, there's bird baths everywhere.
and so, you know, a major component of this would be to make sure we have crown, get the water out of the road at a minimum, get it to the curb and gutter. Ideally, in talking with Jim and staff, you know, usually manholes and gate valves are left about 1/2 inch low. Just due to the soils here, there's discussions of even leaving them up to 1 inch low, so I mean, that might still exist. If there are areas to the extreme of 8 inches, that's certainly unacceptable, so. Hold on, I got one over here first.
Okay,
Harold McDonald, I'm on Second Avenue, First Avenue Southeast, and you're talking about the crowns. We got a crown on one side, they run all the water to the residential people and nothing on the other side. Why do you suppose they would have done that? Our street never dries up. It never dries, if the water runs up to a certain point and then you slosh through it after that.
Taylor, he's on the street going by the heck, when going east, by the baseball field, the track.
Okay.
That's where he lives. If you want a picture where he lives, that's where he's at.
Kind of, I haven't driven around quite enough to know exactly, but,
Third Avenue.
it's certainly something I guess we'd look at and see what,
A good time would be good after you have a good rain and then make a tour. I mean, you can see actually better than anything else. Yeah.
and that's when I actually came down, you know, the reason I didn't come down till August is last year it was so dry for so long that I was able to time it to where I did come down after a rain and, you know, didn't necessarily see as much in the street as I think there probably was, because it was a couple, you know, a day or two later, but definitely saw evidence of water still standing in curb and gutter, so.
The gutters and all, have never been worked on since they put in, on most of that street.
Okay.
But it's something for you to think of.
Okay. Sir, did you have a question?
I got a question, in fact, I got quite a few of them, but I'm only gonna ask.
Chuck, could you
Number
introduce
one,
yourself?
Chuck Punton, 222 First Avenue Southwest in the fourth section of town.
Number one, is this meeting being recorded?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Number two, why isn't there a map of the city with this on handed out to us? Is there?
There's one over there.
We have the one there, and I guess if
Can't every individual have one?
Ashley has access to it, if you guys would like one of the maps.
Well, I would think everybody would like to have some idea in proximity of where that's going on. The rest of my questions will probably wait. Other than the fact, as long as we're talking about this, and I disagree with Jim Anderson, and we'll have water certain anyway. I live 3 blocks straight west of here. My drain is a whole block further east. I just paid $150 to have a guy come in with a transit and shoot the corner of the block. The curb and gutter is 8 inches lower there than it is 75 feet to the west, which is water comes from the west. Going the east, it's 7 inches higher there. So how can you drain water? Well, I have a lake till the birds finally get done swimming in it and it dries up for freezing. So when you say, you know, very little curb and gutter, what is going to recommend, or what is your recommendation, that who's going to get attention, or are we just going to slap a coat on the top here and call it good?
I guess my thoughts are so I have a couple blocks worth of curb and gutter quantity in that cost estimate, on top of the areas identified to add curb and gutter where it may not exist currently.
Well, this is there, and it's very evident. Mr. McDonald just pointed out a great thing. The city people should be aware of it. You drive around town 3 days after rain, in his part, my part, and there's Lake Hillsboro. We didn't have to do one out there on the other side of town.
The neighbors were canoeing on that street a few years ago when we came home from being uptown. There was a lot of water down there.
Okay. And I guess that's, where we look to meetings like this and, knowledge from the local officials to bring these areas to our attention, so the defined areas such as that where there's a 7-inch negative slope, that's significant enough. We need to incorporate that in the plans.
My last thing, and now then I'll leave you alone for a couple hours. I noticed in this, you based corner lots on 75 foot, and that's fine, but you get on the other side of the tracks, just about every corner lot in this town is 100 foot.
Right.
So let's be honest. Let's be honest with the darn figures.
This is just trying to give an example.
realize that, sir.
There's also
Yeah.
several lots in town that the corner lots are 50 foot.
That's very
with
true.
150 foot,
But
so.
if it's 100 foot and theirs is 50, they can divide it by 2 and come up with half of it.
Well, my understanding, the equation previously for corner lots is you add the frontage and the side yard and divide it by 2.
I never knew in this town, unless the ordinance changed since I've been on the committee, you just use the frontage
That's how the previous project, the 2007 pavement project, was assessed.
on the frontage.
On the corners. Took frontage and the side. The 2 examples, it was $9 more a month for the corner lot with the same frontage. And that's strictly because of the street improvement project.
Well, anyway,
So-
then let's get a 100-foot lot put on here, and you're a very smart man. I don't have a computer on me, but if we're looking at $89 for 75 feet, we're looking at about 125, I suppose, for 100 feet. Times 12 would be about $1,500, I suppose.
And Chuck, just a little bit of background on that. When we put the 2 lots together here,
Can't hear you.
when we put the 2 lots together, when we did this equation, we had to use people that we knew that gave permission to take and use their data from their special assessments, previous special assessments. And so that's why you have 2 75-footers versus, basically the rest of it.
Sure.
Just
What did the figure come up with, sir?
around 103 a month for a 100-foot lot. A 100-foot corner lot with a 150-foot deep.
And
Yep.
So then that would be added onto our special per year,
20 years.
And 20 years or less if we get it paid off. Daryl Osborne, by the way.
Thank you.
That would increase if we're buying our homes and everything, that would increase our, home payments by $200 to $300. You know, if you got a $500 a month, house payment with the per month and everything, now your payment just went up to $800. With inflation at 8.25% as of today and everything, the young lady here, mentioned about gas prices, food prices and everything. That's knocking out of our budgets and everything, you know, $300 to $400 a month.
I guess my understanding of it would be,
So-
you know, say you had the $500 house payment and you do have a 100-foot, you know, corner lot with a 150-foot side yard, it would be that 103 to 105 additional per month. I'm not following where the 300 comes into.
See, that's another thing. According to the city of Hillsboro, I have 3 lots on my one property. You know, so is it all 3 lots? So my tax would be tripled?
It would be, however, the parcel, and Steve could maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is it would be the parcel as it's recorded with the county. So you're likely recorded, you know, if you're saying you have 3 lots, that might be when they were platted as 25-foot lots. So your 25-foot parcel, so your lot is actually 75 feet wide. Without going into everyone's specific situation, I'm unable to speak.
I guess a follow-up question would be is, you have specials now. Is all 3 of your lots, you know, special assessed?
I have no specials. From the last project, when that came up, it was, you know, due and that I paid off all the specials, so I had no specials, so my taxes stayed down low.
But what I'm asking is, you paid the specials, so you would be able to go back and look at when you paid those specials off, what you were assessed on, what property you were assessed on. So that would be another data point that would be nice to, you know, be able to take and figure that out too. So if we could ask you to take and provide that, we can figure out, you know, it'll give us visibility into what you would be assessed on.
Rebecca Siebels, if I don't have curb and gutter now, will I have it?
It's hard to see on this map, but we do have a couple areas that were identified.
I live at 329 Second Street Northwest.
It would be across the street, Becky.
Huh?
Not on your side, it would be across the street.
So across the street has it, but I don't have it.
Would you like it?
Well, if I'm paying for it for everybody else to have it, I should have it.
Well, okay. I know there's a lot of questions about curb and gutter and the elevations and fixing. If you want Taylor to go back and do an estimate on what it would cost to do, say, 1/10 of the town and all the curb and gutter, or 1/4 of the town, I think you folks would be shocked at what that would cost. That is a high cost of this project, is any type of curb, because it's not just, I mean, you have to pull it out, you have to do depth excavation, you have to reseed, resod, and then come back and pave it. So it is a big expense, and we're trying to key some the real tough areas, and we just can't fix every bird bath or water that stands for a day or two. It's what we were handed
And
years
just
ago
to
when they did the storm. So the other option is we could start redoing the storm system in town, and I don't think we even want to look at that.
I was gonna say, just on my estimate, I have a copy here of what I have. To remove curb and gutter and replace it, it's $80 a linear foot. So you start figuring that there's 300 to 350 feet per one side of a block. You know, you're 700 feet to do one segment of street if you were to replace all of that. And that doesn't even account for any of the work behind the curb and gutter, because if you start doing that, now you've adjusted your elevations and likely the yards aren't gonna match, so you're gonna either have to excavate soil or bring in soil to get it to match so that the yards tie into the new curb and gutter.
Sidewalks.
Sidewalks
I
on
mean,
top of
there's
that.
so much hidden cost, and I don't wanna make excuses, but we're trying to hold the cost down as much as we can.
You know, so to do both sides of one city block, you're, you know, probably $50,000.
The other side has it, this side don't have it, my side.
With what the current plan is, and if I remember right, that's because generally that's flowing across the road there anyway. I could be mistaken the area as to why we showed it only on the one side and how it would tie in with the yards on the other side. I could be mistaken, but you know, so it's a substantial to do curb and gutter if there's 200 blocks. I mean, times 50,000.
No, I was just wondering if,
So.
And we can, that's a good point, Beck, if you'd like us, we could look at that. I think it isn't just the curb and gutter. I think we'd be looking at filling the ditch in and putting some type of culverts in there, so eventually the water is gonna have to drop down into that big drainage ditch that goes past the golf course.
yeah.
So, but I mean, that's something we can look, that's why we're doing these meetings so that we can get feedback and add or subtract stuff from the project.
Yeah, I don't know
No,
for
I was
sure,
just
but,
wondering if that was in on it.
okay. Not currently that I'm aware of based on what Jim is telling me for your location, so. Yes, sir.
I've heard of different people talking about the ponding and various issues in their streets. Ashley recently sent out a survey.
Yep.
And my question, I got a two-part question. My question is, Ashley, or Terry, the rest of you fellows, is there any way that we can send, and I don't know the way we could do it or how much we give to each resident, is there any way we could send out a map of part of their city, draw it, where their problems lie, and return this to the city hall? So at the next meeting, you can see the problem areas, not just we're just talking about it, we actually have it. And if that's a doable thing, Ashley or Terry, I don't know, but I think it would be a good thing to do. And my second part of my question is, do you have quality control inspectors on the job? If so, if we had this information back to City Hall, you got all done, would we be able to hold your feet to the coals and have it fixed, not at taxpayer expense?
That is part of the construction administration, or that 7% that we were talking about. So assuming that we were aware of the issue and it was called for in the plans and specs, certainly.
I'm saying, if you have the information prior to doing the job, if we get it done,
Yep.
and it's not, and we still have that problem, who's gonna come back and fix it? And I'm not saying like a year from now, because a lot of it cropped up right afterwards, but now it's been, I mean, over the years, it's been showing up, and I don't know if it's poor workmanship or what really happened here, but I think we need more guarantees about this product, this job, just like when I asked you how long it would last compared to the old. You know, we can all sit there and hear, you know, a good story, but I think we need facts and figures, and I think that's what this meeting's all about.
And to go back, Rick, in the past, I went over to Loyal Avenue, for example. We've taken some pictures because it's multiple properties that are impacted, especially over there. I haven't been to Lake Hillsboro, but I got a lake on my east side of my house too. But maybe Jim and I can take and coordinate that after a rain or something and go out and take some pictures so that we can kind of, I think it would be difficult for us to take and get all that property identified on a survey or a map, whereas we could go out and probably get some pictures and stuff that would kind of go back for the engineering purposes.
I really, Terry, all due respect, I really disagree with that, and the reason is, like everybody else here, you and Jim couldn't possibly cover everything. And sometimes it takes so much rain, some it doesn't. I happen to be lucky, I don't have anything sitting in front of me, but I can look right across the street in front of Mike Deck's house. It's a regular lake over there. And those streets, that's a newer development. And that's been that way since almost day one.
And maybe I should rephrase that a picture from you of that particular, sending it in and we compile those all together with what we take would be pretty efficient that way.
That would make sense if the rest of the people living here would do that, if they would take the pictures. But if they don't, would it be better to send out a picture of, say, like a 4-block area so they can draw these on and return them to you, so you have them? And then I'd like to see that done, if it's possible, and then let's have some kind of a guarantee on this. If there's quality control as inspectors, if that job isn't done right, the taxpayers here can hold you accountable for this job, because we've seen a lot of bad paving going on here, and the city crew works hard to, not only that, but when you get a low spot, what happens in the winter time and stuff? We get ice build up if it thaws, and these guys are doing a great job on the city, but there's a lot of things that come into play, and I guess my thoughts are for a lot of the senior citizens is they've got enough on their shoulders right now. And with, like this gentleman said about inflation and everything else, we have to make sure what we're doing. And if there's grants available, Terry, you said it's out till next fall or something?
Well, we'll keep looking for opportunities, and again, I'm hoping that the state will, through the legislative process, allocate more of that oil revenue that they're putting into the legacy fund and make some of those funds available for us too. So no guarantees, but we're going to constantly keep. They have a person, AE2S has a person, Abby out in Bismarck, that's constantly looking for resources for cities like Hillsboro.
Okay, Taylor.
Right west of right south of the store, grocery store up here. I don't know, Jim, if that's still a problem. Do you have a lake over there yet?
No, that's we thawed that out. That's still due to frozen. We had a lot of drains that froze this year. It's every spring that happens. So.
Yeah, usually that was a lake, and same with Loyal Avenue. I knew what that was like because I lived there.
Yeah, then you sold me the house.
Yeah. You gotta remember one thing. I paid your rent to live there while mine was being built.
Going back to Rick's question and answer period here.
Just a minute, Chuck. Ashley wants to add something.
For Rick's question about the map, is there a way that you could get us maybe like 4? So on the screen, if you cut the sections into 4 and give me blew up map, like blown up the 4 sections.
Yep.
Up, and then for like the southwest section, if we have a blown up map of that, I don't know that we can do each individual area, Rick, but if we have if we divide it into 4 sections, quarters, then we could send those out in an envelope with the bills like we did with the surveys. Taylor, is it able to, instead of having one like this though, can it be what's that called?
Blowing up, so it's
you could see like the cheat, yeah.
The only concern with the aerial image is, then when you guys go to mark on it, it may not kind of pop. We'd have to figure out a way to do it, but certainly we can work with the city to do that, because
I don't think
without us knowing, we can't possibly account for everything.
And I don't think Google Earth would work for us to be able to take and blow it up street by street either, because you couldn't annotate anything if I remember correctly. Also, I think, Ashley, do you want to take and give the data on how many surveys you got back out of the total population?
Before we go on to that, can we stay with this discussion a minute? why can't the city has a copier, and I'm sure it's a pretty damn new one.
It's
The place
actually
I
not.
work, we can take a sheet like this, cut it in 4 things, and we can make it the full size. There's no reason the city can't make a 4-piece out of this and get it in the mail within a day.
Couldn't we just send out that map and people can write on that map?
Yeah.
And then they got the map and they can figure out where they live if they, and they can
Right,
just
I was-
highlight.
I was just
from there.
thinking if it was blown up, it'd be easier for them to circle things,
Yeah,
but
'cause
we
this
can
is pretty
send this
small.
one out, that's fine.
Yeah, to do this, like, I am fond of, just a second. I'm fond of the idea of trying to split it into quadrants so it's a little bigger so you guys can identify, and we can at least know which block and you can maybe identify which side of the street. And something along the lines of if it's something in the street section, if it's curb and gutter.
There's no reason the city can't do it right from their copy machine.
Yeah, but we have to get, this is from A to S.
Yeah,
So
we'll
we'd have
get
to have
the
them
map. Certainly.
quarter it up.
He can send it to me, and yes,
Yep.
we made these copies, so yes, we're very capable of making the copies. I'm just
I
asking,
mean,
they have,
enlarging it, like, I don't remember what the ratio was, there was like, on the copy machine where I worked, it had like 6 different sizes, it could raise it, and basic copy went in like this, and come
Right.
out like this.
Chuck, I think we're talking about the same thing.
I realize that, but I
yeah.
just wanna get it filtered straight. Thank
Yep,
you.
Yep, yes, sir.
Just some clarification.
Cody,
on-
could you take and announce your name, please?
Yep, I'm Cody Harstead. I live here in Hillsboro. I'm also on the park board. One of the things that I was trying to figure out on that map, just the overlay on 4th Street on the 200 block, that would run past the county shop on the west side, the apartment building, and the sports complex is directly south of there. Is that overlay going up to the complex, or is that ending at that apartment building?
I'll have to look into that. It's, I guess,
No, it's not.
No.
it's not going to the
Wasn't added
complex?
into
No.
the,
Okay.
And is there a way that we could make that happen?
I'm sorry?
Is there a way that we could make that happen?
We can add it to the project.
With the improvements that are going on out there, I think we're looking towards the future where we have lots of people coming in from out of town for tournaments. And that is probably one of the worst roads to drive on. It's rutted up,
And-
doesn't drain. I mean,
Okay.
it's a gamut of issues, but if we could look at paving that road all the way up through the complex so that we could, I mean,
And I think we'll have to look at a couple other issues if we do that, and the first one is drainage out there. And the second would be the traffic that goes in the Trail County Highway, so we'd have to take that into account also, but I think a big factor there would be to get rid of that drainage where it comes out onto Second, so.
yeah,
but-
I would think that it would have to go to the south for the drain that's all
Yeah,
along the north.
but
side
that's
of the
something, and a lot of residents use that daily. So it would be good, it would be something, and, you know, we can keep adding, I mean, that's, but,
Yeah, and I'm just curious about the traffic. I mean, don't they have to use the other paved streets to go down to the county shop anyway?
correct, and we have to accommodate them, we have no control over, I mean, we have to build these roads to accommodate whatever traffic goes down them, and that's like Caledonia Avenue.
Right.
We have no say of what goes down that, but we have to make it strong enough to maintain that pavement for that traffic.
Yeah, and you can clearly see the ruts that are on that
Yeah.
road from the truck traffic that comes
Yep.
through there. Yeah,
It's a good point.
If we could work on potentially bringing that down to the complex, I would appreciate it.
Sure, okay.
Terry, Rick Nelson. Terry, I think you were alluding to a pretty good question there. You asked, we're starting to ask Ashley, how many of those surveys were returned? And that's something that if we do this, is there a way of tracking it? And if we don't get them in, somebody doesn't mail them in, Ashley, I know girls got a lot to do, but is there some way we can make this an effective thing to do? If, say, so many people aren't doing it or whatever, send them a notice, we'd like to know. I know it's a lot of work, but I'm just I think Terry had a good question there, and I
So-
think that's what you were thinking about, Terry.
We got back 131 out of 850. We don't, they were, a lot of them were just dropped in the Dropbox, and we made it so it was anonymous, because we wanted people to give us more feedback, and a lot of people don't want their name attached to something, and so that's why we did it that way. So I don't have any way of tracking who did not send them back. However, with something like this, I would hope they would be okay, because obviously it's going to be, they're going to mark on their street. So if we were to send this map out, it would be easier, I would think, to track the map coming back in, because I would think they'd want their name on it, or at least their address or location, so at least we know what location of town they're talking about. I think we could kind of figure it out even if they didn't put their name on the envelope. So I think that would be easier to track, so we could do
And
that.
I think, Rick, this is a specific instance where we're trying to, as the citizens are involved, trying to take and improve, the infrastructure in Hillsboro. So it's not a lot of other questions that might be of a personal concern to some of the people that do it. So, but I just want you to be aware that, again, the return isn't always what we expect it to be, so.
Yeah, I know, I was thinking if it wasn't, if we could do like a follow-up on the ones that haven't, so that we make this thing, what the project, what we're trying to make sure that it succeeds, is that if we can do a follow-up and say, like, if you sent me one and you've had my name on it, to get it back to you, but it's dropped off or whatever.
And what I would recommend, Ashley, and I'll take and you see what you think about this, but our timeline is pretty flexible here.
Yeah.
And we use the utility bills as how we sent out the survey. So if we use the utility bills for the mapping process, and then we do it 2 months in a row, that might be that follow-up that you're looking
Yeah,
for.
Yeah, that brings me, Darrell Osborne, that brings me to a question. When I got that and everything, I noticed that you guys sent that, I got it in an envelope and everything, and it went to Fargo, then back. Well, the money that we spent on postage and everything, I know it's not that much, but, the envelope went to Fargo and then came back up.
That unfortunately has nothing to do with us.
We had a nice post office
No,
here.
that's, we put it in the post office here. That's how they do it. They have to send it to Fargo. So unfortunately, because I asked the same question, like, why is this stamped Fargo? When I first moved here, I didn't understand, so I asked, and everything gets sent to Fargo. It's not like it used to be. They don't get Hillsboro mail and process it in Hillsboro. Everything gets sent to Fargo and then sent back. So unfortunately, that's out of our control. I wish that I could say we could make it so it just stays in Hillsboro, but that's the U.S. Postal Service, so that we can't help.
Taylor?
Go ahead.
Ta-
I'm Les Hurt from Hillsboro Avenue, or Hillsboro. Getting back to the PCI, we're at a 70 to 56 in fair condition. So how many points we lose in a year if we do nothing?
That's hard to say, because how these are done is I have my field inspection form, and you go out and you observe what distresses you see. You have a list of, I believe there's 26 different items you're looking for, and then you measure both the severity of them, low, medium, and high, and also the quantity of them. And so you can have some estimates. I guess, you could be losing 2 to 6 points a year, I would potentially argue. It's so random based on, was there a transverse crack that was there, transverse being going across the road. Was there a transverse crack there previously, but it was considered a low, and I forget, I didn't bring the book with me, but, if it's less than a 1/4 inch of displacement, then it's a low severity, for example. Well, say the frost was tough that year and now you're at 3/4 of an inch, and that puts it into a medium or a high severity. Each of those has different deductions, based on severities and quantity, so it's a hard one to just say, here's what it is, without having kind of continuous data points from the same system to say, well, historically, here's what it's performed at for the city of Hillsboro.
And Les, I think we're kind of at the same spot we were with the old runway.
Yeah,
Remember how bad that was and the weather impacts on the old runway versus the new concrete one?
And we had to replace it.
Yep, and so I think we're quickly coming to the same, you know, in some areas of the city, we're coming into the same sort of criteria where if we don't do something, it's gonna break up and we're gonna have a heck of a time fixing it, so. But that's just, I know that you're familiar with what happened with the old runway, and remember when we had to patch it up just so we could get the Hermes 450 to fly off the damn thing? Yeah, we're kind of there with some of our streets.
Factors that play into that, and you know, the weather and the traffic and the subsoil, and as the rating gets worse, it's kind of a curve. You kind of go downhill faster, depending on what part of the curve you're in.
Absolutely, a great question though.
I got another question on Caledonia. You know, that's a lot of truck traffic on there, and I wish when they put 81 on there, they went cement all the way to the interstate. Now at the airport, it actually got to be cheaper to put cement down the runway than using asphalt because oil prices rose so high. How much, could you do like a cost analysis on time, because of the asphalt would only last, what, 20 years, where concrete, we could get 40 out of it?
Yeah, so within the industry, usually a bituminous pavement or an asphalt is a life cycle of 20 years, whereas a concrete pavement, they do a life cycle over 30. Now, there's a weird, someone in the bituminous industry has pulled strings to where they say, well, because we can only go to 20, concrete has to also do their life cycle cost analysis to a 20-year limit as well, which I would argue is unfair because you have a higher capital up front, but with that you get a longer return. We did discuss that, and I believe I even have some cost estimates of, you know, doing concrete on Caledonia, and it significantly increased the project cost, but I don't have those exact numbers off the top of my head. So it was something that was discussed. When I started with AE2S, I was actually out in 2012 in our Williston office, so I was out in the Bakken, and that, you talk about rutting, I mean, that asphalt pavement out there was rutted. If you didn't have a pickup or an SUV, you were high centering your car. And I know they went to, and I brought this up to Jim and Terry and Dave, is they had a certain distance at each stoplight that they went concrete as you approached it, to account for that movement and that pushing of the pavement with that oil field traffic. It's something that we kind of discussed here. I don't know that the rutting is that extreme to justify that cost, especially if we start using this FAA pavement, you know, which, like I said, the DOT's been, I think it's 2014 when they really started using it in their 2014 specs. So, but it was looked at to do concrete, and I do have a kind of quick and dirty estimate, and I can certainly discuss that further with the commission. And
with the price of oil going up, I mean, the pavement's gonna go higher. That's what the problem was at the airport there.
Yeah, and we did, they did the numbers, Taylor did, but I can't remember what it was, but I know that Dave and our eyebrows raised quite a little. The other factor too, Les, that we considered is that if we go to concrete on Caledonia from 81 all the way to the interstate, now we're taking that main thoroughfare out of business for quite a few weeks, you know, basically, where we'd have to take and push traffic to other areas to get around. So that was another consideration that we kind of talked about, so. But yeah, perfect world. I'd love to have cement out there.
I actually did find, you know, so just based on the quick numbers that I had come up with, you know, the Caledonia portion to do the, what I would call an edge mill and 4-inch overlay to reestablish that crown, with bituminous, you know, you're in the $500,000 range. And to just do Caledonia with concrete, not do any subgrade work to it. You know, if Geotech were to come back and say the subgrade's fine and there's strength there, you just need to take the asphalt out and put concrete in. You know, it was over 1.5, so it added $1 million to the project for that stretch of street. Based on the numbers I was using with 2021 bid prices that we had seen and DOT prices.
But you would get 10 years more out of it. So,
Oh,
Jim,
you triple the cost to get an extra 50%.
yeah. So Jim, I know I'm sure you haven't thought about this, but what's your thought on that? Putting concrete, what do you see? Do you see a problem with coming up to stop signs and stuff like that on Caledonia?
You're gonna have that, wherever you have asphalt meeting concrete, you're gonna have, you can see it at the valley gutters, you're gonna have that wear and that breaking. Like Terry said, I'd love to have concrete there too and never have to worry about it again. But it goes back to the same thing, is that extra money worth putting into the project? I look at the traffic on Caledonia, and there are some substantial ruts in there now that have come over the last 20 years. Those nasty cracks come back all the time. I do feel it has a pretty good base, and then what Taylor said was if we start doing some sampling and find out, well, not just peel the asphalt off, but we got to take off 5-8 inches of material and put gravel too, but it's a good, we did think about it, we did bring it up before we went up to the county council meeting. And
I kind of, my thought is this. I'm all for having nice streets, good streets, making our community look well, good, but we've all talked about jobs that have been done in the past. And I think that's also a big concern, not only cost, but to make sure that we have quality control, that we have all these issues that we've been talking about covered, so that if there's a problem, the community and the taxpayers aren't being held responsible for it.
That's why you hire an engineer, that's his job to make sure it's done right.
Yeah.
Didn't happen last time.
And remember what I've seen over the years, the lowest bid isn't always the best one.
That's true.
Can I say one? Cody, I apologize, I looked at the map, and the project does go about up to the apartment building, so almost to the complex, so it would only be probably an additional 100 feet, I'm saying, into the complex, but, so that is on the map on the schedule.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that I know that road has been pretty bad in the past. Just a couple things maybe. Have you guys addressed any, I know you talked about signage in this, I mean, it's just kind of a side note, but potentially, I don't want a city of stop signs by any means, but addressing some of the uncontrolled intersections where they're more likely to have crashes. And the one I can think of right off the top of my head is 2nd and 2nd Northeast. Just addressing some of those with some yield signs potentially based on crash data that the state likely already has anyway.
And Cody, that's a good point, and it actually came up in the commission meeting last night. There's citizens that would like to go back to yield signs versus stop signs. So that dialogue is starting.
Okay.
And then also, just so you know that Jack was there and Gary was there, we had the lodging tax committee meeting tonight, and I know the signage that you're looking at for the park and some of those things, I think we need to bring those in now. I know that Levi is involved with the rec district, but you know, standardizing those so that as we do the street signs and stuff, it's all you know, common kind of colors and different things like that, and getting to both sides. So I brought that up, that we talked to the commission about that too. So.
And then the other side note was, it may be beneficial for members of the community to know what it costs to replace a road when you're only doing a 2-inch overlay versus doing the underlayment and overlay on top of it. So if we don't do anything, the roads degrade to the point where we're fixing that underlayment, how much more expensive it does get.
Okay.
So it looks expensive up front because it is.
Yep.
But if we don't do anything, what does our cost become when now we have to replace underlayment as well?
No, that's certainly something we can provide. And in regards to signage, so the estimate here is basically to just replace existing stop signs. It doesn't have anything in regards to re-signing intersections currently. Certainly we could include that or change that. I mean, it's a relatively small portion of the project, so even if you added yield signs for currently uncontrolled intersections, I haven't seen any of the crash data, but certainly, yeah, if it's there and it exists, and quite often that can even have grant funding, once you start talking direct safety based on crash data. But it's just to deal with the stop signs that are no longer reflective, or they're, it's faded to white, or the red is peeling off, and same with the street signs as well. So that's the signage portion that was included in this is to replace existing currently, but.
And the street signs, so they're more visible for first responders.
I was more interested, I can think of second and second. There was one summer, I'm pretty sure we were there once a month covering crashes. So it would be nice to address some of the more, I shouldn't say, the ones that are more likely to have crashes. And they're gonna be closer to the thoroughfares.
And if you could help us with that data, Cody, from the Highway Patrol's position, that'll help us as a commission to be able to take and do it.
Sure.
I know the one that gets me all the time is the stop sign that we have by the clinic right now. That thing's not very reflective, and I know I've come up to it a couple times going, oh crap.
Yeah, and
So-
I wasn't looking to have to stop every single block, but there's a couple of places where when you cross that intersection, due to the house placement and trees and things of that nature, you pretty much gotta slow down, otherwise you're gonna be.
Well, I think Chuck asked the same question last night. Who has the right of way, right, Chuck?
Yeah, I have the right.
Yeah. Goes back
Absolutely.
It was a minor side note that I've always thought that there's been a few intersections that should probably be addressed.
Well, we'd look forward to your help on that.
Oh my God, we know that.
Yes, sir.
I just have a question
I gotta call tomorrow and get
on the rural side of things, west of interstate going south, how far south?
That would get, did that go to, is there a lift station or what's down there
It's a lift station.
so down to, there's a lift station south of the Total Ag building is what we currently have shown.
So the other businesses wouldn't have paved road there?
What's south of that, Jim?
Nothing.
RS
Electric?
No, that's out of the city.
That's
That's way out of the limits.
Is it
And then going south on Main Street, where you're gonna go south into 81 to pave it, or where's that going?
This currently just shows it going south, because then as soon as you get to whether it's township or county or whoever has the jurisdiction over that east-west road down there, to go east across the tracks, then you're dealing with railroad, and that's not an inexpensive thing. So it's just something that was kind of added on as a wish list item. I anticipate that's something that maybe first on the chopping block if the consensus is this is too expensive. So.
And Bill, I think we're also looking for the substation where we got the diesel generators out there too, a little bit easier access for us to get down there. So that was one of the reasons that we looked at.
And that needs drainage work down
Yep.
there too. The water's always standing there. It runs across the road in the spring.
Yeah, if you drive down there right now, it's standing in water.
Yeah.
Okay.
But one thing I added, Les mentioned, or a lot of guys have mentioned it tonight about the truck traffic in Hillsboro. Is there ever gonna be a day when that truck road around town is paved and we divert truck traffic around town like we have on the east side?
That's a good question for the township.
Well, will the city ever pursue that to the township?
It's not in the city.
Well,
I mean, right
it's-
now, Caledonia is closed to trucks from the east side of town to
Okay.
81, right?
Well, it's supposed to be.
Supposed to be, but it's not.
It's not.
Well,
but
you're
it's
talking
supposed
from 81 going east.
Right.
I believe that's not
Yeah, they're,
within the current truck
they're
route.
supposed to use Post Road to
Right.
take and get around it.
But I think it's something as a city, not to interrupt you, but the city's growing, which is great. The truck traffic is increasing every year, which is great. But we need to do something to get the trucks going around town. I farm in the area, it's the amount of grain, farm to market to Alton, bean harvest. I look at Anchor, not to point them out, but there's a ton more truck traffic. I think in this project, we need to look at doing something with that with the township.
And I think that the commission agrees with you there, Bill, that, the township and the county would have to be partners in doing something of that magnitude for the city. We'd have to have a lot of collaboration on that, and the other part is that gets so dang washboardy taking trucks around there. It's really tough in the summertime too, I know. Now, we have this winter helped blow the snow out into the fields so that we didn't get the puddling on the road. So we did kind of, partner with that stretch of road out there because some of the people that live out there were concerned about being able to get that snow off so the drainage would be better. But yeah, we do have a lot of work to do with the trucks. Another one that I think Paul's probably pretty interested in, we're seeing a lot of anchor traffic on 81 now. Coming down tonight, there's a lot of gravel and, coming out of that parking lot that's getting onto the streets. What's that doing to our drainage systems and those things? So we need to start a dialogue with them to, maybe see how they can help us out there too. But just sweeping the streets isn't going to be enough if they continue to take and bring that wet gravel and stuff out of their parking lots. So those are items that I've made note on that we have to start talking a little bit with everybody to make sure that we keep those highways fairly clean out there, so.
I thought that South Loop was county. Is signed as like a county
The
13?
the bypass around Hillsboro is actually a township road. And this is an agreement I've heard of when I started many years ago. The frontage road that goes past Total Ag and Dagelman is actually owned by the city, and they swap maintenance. So we maintain this one down here, they maintain that. So if it does get paved and it is our street, there will be some changes in the maintenance. I'm assuming they're not going to take over any type of blacktop maintenance on that road, so maybe at that point it'll be switched over, so. But it is a township road.
You're talking about the frontage road on the west side of the interstate?
On the south, that goes south, that is actually owned by the city. The frontage road is owned by the city.
Okay, how about on the east side when you go by John Deere, the loop around that he was talking about?
That's the city also. No, well,
But that's
it
signed
goes
as
to the
county.
city limits, which I'm guessing is where the asphalt ends now, just past John Deere.
Okay.
And the rest is township.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay,
But
I was
that-
curious,
but that
because
actually-
it's signed as county.
No, it's not. Not
And
that
we
stretch.
thought that was
Is
the
it?
truck route as well, but the truck route is signed
Yes,
currently as
yes,
Caledonia to
Caledonia.
81.
Yeah, it's signed, truck road is signed down here and then south and then around
Post Road.
the edge of town. That's the signed truck route.
Yes.
This is a question for Terry. How much longer will us in Hillsboro be liable for the development on the other side of town?
The development, the Riverwalk development out there is a special assessment already zoned and bonded for, so all those specials are paid for by those lots that, when they get bought and sold out there. So there's, I like to look at it as the city of Hillsboro, but that there won't be any extra expenses for this paving project that come out of Riverwalk. That's all handled with a separate bonding issue out there.
And so I guess the other component, and maybe Ashley, if you want to switch back to the handout.
We actually have two questions that came in on
Certainly.
the email. Jacob Cohen, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. With the price tag being pretty steep with this project, are the new paving sections 165 4th Avenue and South Main necessary? What is the reasoning for signing around town? How would the city be maintaining the streets after new pavement has been placed? Does the city have a repair plan already in place for potholes, cracks, sealing, chip sealing, etc.? I think if we are going to be doing this, the citizens of Hillsboro deserve a good quality product that could last 30 to 35 years or longer with proper maintenance.
So a couple, the question, the 164th, I think is 163rd. Is that the frontage roads on the west side of town? Yeah. I believe. Those two that are currently gravel, and then the South Main. I guess the thought on that was it was brought forth by some of the commission to not have those be gravel sections within the city right away. So that's why those were shown on the map and in the cost estimate, or why they were included in the project. I think a lot of the rest of the questions were for you.
Well, I just want to take and reiterate on Jim's behalf too, that we do have a plan in place to maintain our streets every summer. If I remember correctly, Jim, you hire a couple of people that go out and put the tar and tape and fix up potholes and stuff too. This new project would allow us to have a better base to work from and repair that. And I'd like to see it. I think he said 30 years. That would be pretty awesome if we could do it. And it goes back to taking care of what the new project would bring. So, but I do want to say that there is a plan in place, that there is street maintenance that happens every year.
I'll just add to that I've had conversations with some of the commissioners, and I know that we need to do a better job of our street maintenance. Not saying that it was done horrible in the past, but we do need to do a better job so that it will last longer. Because if we, on the last project, if we only lasted 15 years and we're paying it off, that is not a long enough longevity. So if we have to put a little bit more into our street budget so that we can take care of it, that's going to be more important so that this will last. We can't just put cold tar down and expect it to hold it together for long-term maintenance. We're going to have to look at, maybe the whole town wouldn't get done at one time. Maybe we have to look at a little different plan. But that is my thoughts and other commissioners that I've talked to about that. We need to look at. We do have a plan in place, but we need to probably revamp that so that we can get longer longevity out of it and not have some of the issues that we are today.
What if we scale back this project a little bit, do a Main Street, and possibly get a overlay machine and a roller like we used to have years ago, and patch our side streets?
I think that would be something we could look into, but then the other thing that we'd have to consider as we move forward in it is, do we have enough crew to do it?
We could hire some temporary help and pay them $30,000 a month and still be way cheaper.
It possibly could be, yes.
Are you going to be satisfied, Mike, are you going to be satisfied with the product you get by hiring a couple temporaries to run a lay-down machine?
Well, I'd come and run it.
I would
Okay, well, we got one temporary.
Well, wait, if it's 30,000 a month, I
just-
have to take take that to the
And
commission.
I want to add on what Levi said about
I got a
about
question.
budgeting is,
I got a question. Okay, 2 or 3 banners ago, I read in the paper where the commission, to help with this project here, wanted to see if the county could come up with, paying some of the cost and everything past the bridge there on the outside there. But then the last banner, the most recent one, I read that where the county wants to increase our mills up to 40 mill tax, because they don't have enough money. How are we going to take and expect the county to do the, that portion when they're asking for 30 mil to increase on their own?
And I won't speak on Tom's behalf since he's here, but you know, we did go and present to the county to see if we could get assistance with Caledonia with the, asking that they not make a decision that day, that they be able to have the discussion going forward, and that we would come back to them and, you know, again, do another presentation and see if there's a way that we could take and cost share on Caledonia. So we haven't had a chance to do that. I think the input that we're getting tonight is really important because it gives us some data points for us to take a look at. But I think speaking, and Dave can, you know, hop in here too, that I think we plan on going back to the county and seeing if we can get some assistance with Caledonia. And I don't know if Tom wants to, you know, say anything or not.
Well, I'm gonna leave that part where you just ended it. As far as the 40 mills, we're not talking about raising anything. We're talking about just keeping what we have, the funding in place. That's all we're talking about, not raising anything. I don't know what the article read, how it read.
Well,
But
basically it says we're at 10 now, but up to 40.
We are at 40, and we want to be able to keep it, but the legislature's made some changes that unless we're proactive and keep this in place, we have the potential to lose our gain.
It's pretty similar to what we ended up doing with the rec district, where our mills were only there for so long and then we had to go back to the public and vote again. So the county's in the same situation with this, same as they were with the ambulance district.
And then I think to add to that, Tom, you're looking at the June election with the fallback being the November election if it has to come up again, if I remember correctly.
I'd just like to we're talking about maintenance, and it doesn't matter if we put 2 or 4 or 6 inches of asphalt down on our streets. It's just the nature of the beast with the thawing and the freezing and the warm. We're gonna get cracks back again, whether it's new blacktop or not. Those cracks are gonna come back, and that's where the maintenance comes into play. So you're gonna see cracks, whatever.
And I actually learned something. Taylor told us that the best time to take and repair cracks is actually in the wintertime. When you get that maximum expansion on the crack instead of the summertime when you have that, it kind of seals up again. So I even learned something through this process.
Okay, I have one more that wrote in. Randy Spokley. The dirt and cement truck traffic, this is around the Jordal edition. The dirt and the cement truck traffic has been tough on 2nd Street Northwest. Is there anything that could be assessed to that project? The patching that was done last year helped a lot. Thank you, Randy. So I think that's more for the commission.
Yeah, I think that with the Jordal addition, you know, it's changed a little bit over the since the original planning took place. But John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we gave it a pilot, a payment in lieu of tax credit, basically for the improvements that he had to get into his project. But we can't really do a special assessment on Jordal because that pilot, that payment in lieu of taxes, is basically locked in as an agreement for how many years? 5?
5.
Yep, for each one as each building comes in. So, and I think is it 8 out there now? 8, yeah. So, and then he still has the west side that he'll have to finish. So, but again, I'm hoping that he takes and kind of continues his construction this summer to finish that project up out there.
And some privacy fences would be nice.
We'll make a note of that.
Would you please? Thank you.
Ma'am, what's your name, ma'am? What's your
Roxy.
Who?
Roxy?
We had a map of the PCI ratings. Is there, or maybe there isn't, but is there a map of where the different ratings are on the streets?
I apologize, it was on this map, and I recreated the map today, and I see that didn't get included on there.
Okay.
So we do have an older edition of the map that, yeah, like
Taylor's
this one
in
over
on
here
that
has it, for example, the one on the phone board. has the bubbles with the PCI ratings on it.
And that covers every street, correct? Or
Nope,
just area?
so this was to kind of get a pulse on the condition of the streets within the city. So I actually went around, drove around with John, looked at the various streets, and then I kind of said, okay, which streets do you feel are the worst? Which streets do you feel are the best? And give me a handful of in-between streets. So that was a sampling of the city's network with high confidence that it's reflective of the entire city.
Okay.
Question. Go back about 6 minutes ago, you mentioned something about this 163rd, that a couple commissioners wanted that put on this project. Did I understand that right?
It was discussed when we met with, I don't know, would we call that the streets committee, if you will? So that's where we got any of our information regarding, you know, what, like to add the signage, to do drainage improvements on this given block, that kind of stuff. So it was from those meetings.
Okay.
And Chuck, just so you know, I was one of the ones that asked for that to be put on there. Again, knowing that the specials will have to be paid out there with the, but we kind of structured it, Dave, if I remember correctly, 500 feet was what Taylor kind of recommended for the intersection there on 11 for semi-traffic, that load bearing, that kind of goes back to on Caledonia, where if you have that kind of stopping, it takes that weight as you're deaccelerating going in. So that was one of the reasons why we asked for that out there, was with all the anchor traffic and with the other traffic that goes to Dagelman and Total Ag and stuff, that was kind of a stopping area for those big semis.
Okay, then my question is, I'd like to have an answer probably at the next meeting. What is this 163rd per se pavement and this little street down here, what dollar figure is that part of this project?
We do have the figures for that.
Yep, I can get you that here in a minute. Just need to find the right file.
It's, if this is the sheet it's off of, it's 520. Is that the one it's off of, this one? Is that the current bid or not?
Yeah, so the 163rd stuff I have as an estimate of about 529,000. And the South Main stuff from here to the south end would be just shy of 320.
That's close to $1 million.
Yeah, you might as well say close to $1 million.
Yeah.
It's nice to know. I do feel, in all honesty, and I'll say it at this meeting, Cody's got the right idea. Let's go out to the ballpark. We've got many, many things going on there. Forget about 163rd and the little South Main down here. And this won't be the last time we'll bring it up. But thank you, that's what I wanted to know.
You're welcome.
Well, that's what the meeting's about, Chuck, is to gather the information. Yep.
I know this isn't the whole city that's here, but we have a somewhat of a representative. As a whole project, I kind of get from the group that is not a project that you guys want to happen at that much. Would you rather see us do smaller parts and not do the whole city and try to pick and choose? Is that a better option that you'd rather see, and try to maybe fix some of the other streets that we have?
I think myself, I'm not, I think it's gonna cost you more in the long run if you do it that way, my own opinion. But I also think if there's a chance of getting a grant for some funding, if I'm wrong, would you get it on a bigger project than a smaller one? Or on a piecemeal, would you, if you go to get more money or try to find some, would it, I just think that, I don't know if the chances are better, but I think in the long run, Levi, not to contradict what you're saying, but I think that in the long run, if you extend it out, it's gonna cost you more, because you pay more for smaller projects than you for bigger projects. Just like remodeling. If you're remodeling a house, you're better off to do it all at once and you have a crew there. That's my opinion.
And I'm not saying, Rick, like, little pieces here or there, but some of the worst sections that we have, and fixing, say, Caledonia and some of those areas, because, you know, one of the other numbers that is kind of eye-opening was it's 1.5 million to do just the ADA compliance for the whole city. So if we do all the streets, it's 1.5 million that we need to spend just to bring up all our sidewalks up to compliance.
And those are just the sidewalk ramps.
Right.
Following the grants around the grant money, it's more the type of the project, not the size of the project. And they don't have any alterage for just, you know, they had like roads and bridges that you've seen all over the news, there's money for them, but them are big bridges and main thoroughfares and stuff, like big city stuff there.
The larger, flashier projects quite often.
And I tend to agree with you when you mention about bringing to the ball diamond. I'd rather, you know, they're putting in lights, they're doing a lot of stuff out there. I'd rather see that paved than the other.
That makes more sense.
That's where that is, like Chuck mentioned, I think it was Chuck, that you drive on that, and I mean, you're lucky if your teeth aren't shook out. I mean, it's like this, and it's not a good, it doesn't bode well for the city of Hillsboro when people come in for tournaments and stuff, and they gotta drive down an old washboarding road. I'd rather see the money spent going there and making that complex look better.
Well, I think we agree with Rick on that, and I was happy to see that Cody was successful in getting the lights for, and I'd like to see lights in all three stadiums eventually, but you know, that did change the dynamic now for that road out there to get to the ballpark complex, simply because, you know, the progressive opportunity that we have to get that lighting up. So that we were planning this kind of before that was actually approved. So I think that that's a good idea, that, you know, we can take a look at adding that all the way into the complex there. So
I think the majority of the community would rather see that done. I know I would.
And like Jim confirmed, I mean, we have it shown almost all the way down there already, so to extend it an extra 100 or 150 feet relative to 12 million, I mean, it will add some to the project, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And just from my outside perspective in regards to, do we focus on the main thoroughfares and the worst streets? You know, that discussion was had as well, and it's kind of, where do you draw that line? And then all of a sudden people are in here mad because their street isn't getting done. So it's, I mean, it was talked about and considered and discussed, that, but it's certainly great to, you know, hear from all of you guys and gals in regards to your opinions on that. So
could I just make a comment, Chuck? I think too, when you bid the whole city versus doing bits and pieces of it, you're likely to get a better contractor coming in to do it, because you move that equipment once and you get everything set up. Whereas if you come in multiple times, you're probably not going to get the bidders that would do the best job. I'd look to you to say what you think.
You have to, and I have to agree with that whole concept. Is it isn't just the paving crew you'd be getting in. You'd have to hire underground work to do piping. You'd have to get concrete people to do curb and gutter. And where do you start? And to coordinate and getting all those different crews together to commit to one summer to one section is going to be tough, because they go out and bid these big projects. That's where they're working. And then it's after that, it's how do you pay for that? You know, how do you pay for $300,000?
handicap with the draft assessment list, etc. Current schedule would have construction the summer of 2023. We just stated May to September. And then in September of 23, there would be the special assessment public hearing, confirm and certify the assessment list, and publish notice of confirmed assessment list. Step 7 would then be the following month in October. And I think there has to be 2 readings of that, if I'm not mistaken, and that's why that confirmation would be there again. Pass the resolution confirming the assessments, and then the assessments would start in 2024. So that's kind of a tentative schedule. Some of these step 1, 2, and 3 things are flexible because the window for step 3 is so large. So I anticipate these will probably get pushed back to have another meeting in a couple weeks, or another month.
Yeah, we kind of planned this, this timeline to be able to slip. It all depended upon what the outcome of this meeting was gonna be. If everybody came in and went, yep, let's do this, let's get her going. And now hearing concerns from the citizens, that will take, and we'll put some more meetings in and make sure that all the citizens have a chance to take and weigh in on it. And I think that the flow of information that we've had tonight was pretty informative, and we've gotten a lot of feedback from this particular meeting too. So that'll all go into the future meetings that we'll take and sit around, have the commission come into a town hall situation again and gather some more information. So, but I think it was important for us to push this out.
Does everyone get assessed at the same rate, or does some of the new construction get assessed at a different rate?
That's ultimately decided by the assessment commission. My understanding historically on these street projects is if you are non-corner lot, it's per linear foot of your frontage. And if it's a corner lot, like I was stating earlier, it's frontage plus side divided by 2.
What if you're getting a gravel road turned into a paved road, you're assessed at the same rate that everyone else is assessed?
The way this is currently set up or structured, it would be. The other thing this doesn't take into account is, I think quite often there are different assessment rates for commercial. Again, since knowing probably the majority of people would be residents, we figure this as the worst case, highest cost to the residents. So even these numbers here of the 62 a month on a 75-foot frontage standard lot, or the 89 a month on a 75-foot corner lot, those should also be.
And the properties that are along 81, which would have asphalt put down, those would be assessed in this project too, right?
Ultimately up to the assessment commission, but if it's a citywide project, I would be led to believe that they would.
Yeah, Mike, that will come up, as we get into the future, when we get into the details of it, that's when that'll be raised, that issue. Yes, sir.
I'm Melvin Erdman. I live over in the southeast corner of town. 2 things. One, have you taken into consideration any of the 100, 120-year-old pipes that are under the ground? And will we have to be digging up this new asphalt to replace that in 5 years or 2 years or next winter? And the second thing is, I go to church at Our Savior's Lutheran Church, which is a block east of Caledonia from 81. And when I come in from the south side of the street, when I'm down in the curb and I have to come up to the crown of the road, I'm sure it does not meet ADA requirements because I have a really hard pull to get up that. And then a few years back, you guys put in a nice curb cut over in front of the Wells Fargo Bank. You come off of that cut, it is so steep, I have to turn around and back up it because I can't push myself up there forward. I have to pull myself up and push with my feet. So just because you put in a curb cut doesn't mean it's going to be ADA accessible. You got to take into consideration what's the next few feet of the sidewalks like. You can't come off the curb cut and then have it straight up. So just wanted you to think about that underground because I lived in a town of Vanderlyn a few years back, over 30 years now, and they replaced the streets and then they tore them all up and replaced the stuff under them. Not a good idea.
On that point, Jim has kind of raised the issue too, and I'm acutely aware that sometimes, I had to dig up over there for the brewery to take and put a new sewer pipe in. And so that is something that we're very cognizant of, and I'll let Jim talk to it, but we have been scoping, I call it, putting cameras through to look at that. But we are very aware that our infrastructure is older than average, and there's the potential that something could come up. We look at it as infrastructure. You know, our electrical, system needs to have some repairs. We're constantly trying to put funding forward for that, but and then we got the new project basically that's going to take the sewer lines and stuff out to the lagoons and some of those new projects that we got grant funding, partially grant funded for that. So we are trying to come up with, how can I say it, a more strategic plan to be able to be more proactive and look out a couple of years, but we're still kind of tossing that around amongst the commissioners and being able to do that. And that's good data for us to hear from you about, the handicapped accessible, access there. And so that's a note that we'll have to take a look at and see how, wherever we can help with that,
I hate to take up parking spots downtown, but handicap parking spot is out in front of this building and the other one's in front of the theater. My favorite two places to shop are the drugstore and Olson Hardware.
So let's make a note about a handicap parking spot. Where would you like to have it?
I don't know, but I'm just saying that, and I don't mind getting exercise on flat ground, but, this winter's been awful, so I haven't been out hardly at all. So.
Okay. Well, if you come up with a suggestion, shoot that to us so that we can have a discussion. That does make a lot of sense to have
It could be
a better handicapped parking.
Uptown, I guess.
Yeah. And is there a preference for parallel or, angled parking for you to get in and out of,
When I'm by myself, then I'd like to unload out of the traffic. So when I park on the Caledonia in front of Olson's, I'm unloading into the traffic. I don't like that.
Okay.
When my wife brings me uptown and she unloads me onto the sidewalk, then that's a different story. Unloading on a drive-in spot, you're always on an angle. The street angle's down towards the curb, makes it harder. I park out here in front of the city hall about once a month, and it's a little, especially if it's slippery, it's harder when the street's at an angle.
yeah. And then just another question. So the closer to the corner a handicap parking spot would be better for you because then you can go up and get onto the corner, onto the sidewalk is.
If I'm going into the passenger side of the vehicle, correct.
Okay.
Or the other, I park right in front of Wolf's, I come out in front of the car and go onto the street.
Jim and I will get together with Tyler and Steve and we'll try to figure something out and send it out to you.
And then about the softball complex, I don't know how many of you have been out there in the mornings when they have T-ball or Little League practice, and there's 100 kids coming on bicycles riding on that gravel road, and then parents trying to drop off other kids. It's really spooky to see kids not watching and cars going down that road at the same time. So that sidewalk that's on the east side of that street would sure be nice if that was cleared off so it's 4 feet wide and get the rocks off of it.
I think that sidewalk is wider than it actually looks.
Yeah, it's
if I'm
done.
not mistaken, it just needs some
Cleaning up.
But it needs to be edged about 1.5 feet on each side. So anyway, that's things that I've observed. And
I think Ashley's got those notes. Anything?
And like Terry said, with regards to the underground, that's something that's always brought up and a concern. Obviously, this is a huge project to consider and possibly move forward with, and that's kind of one of those cost, benefit, and risk analysis that, I guess we look to the city staff in regards to.
I worked on Main Street, so when we had the big city street project, and then have to turn right around and come back with an underground project. There was a lot of conversation in my story.
Yep.
And not very nice either.
No, and it's, based on the data that the city has, they're fairly confident that the infrastructure is good to the point of making this investment, knowing that there will be some instances where you know, a break may occur or there may need to be tearing into the pavement, so. But it certainly was a point of discussion and brought up and talked about several times, so.
Because I know in front of the brewery, or on the side of the brewery, you know, that spot they have to dig up that time.
Yep.
But we had to jump through it yesterday.
I have a question back here though. Jack Hansen, I'm a resident here. The last time we had special assessments divided out, Buster Fankel and I were the committee that sat down, made sure everything was equal as much as we could. If I remember correctly, I take a lot that's, you know, 300-foot lots, whatever, just, you know, for a block. The way we did it, we took the total cost per foot of it, and we went back to the alley on both sides, and say it was $1,000 a foot. I don't, just pick a number, I don't care what you got. We would put $500 a foot up on both sides and add that to the frontage of the 300-foot lots. So the corner person did not get penalized for having, you know, two sides. And that's how we did and then the next block would be the same way. That's how, I remember that's how we did it, so. That's a little bit different than what you decided, you quoted there, but as much as I can remember, that's what Buster and I.
Okay. Was
that 2007?
I believe, yeah.
And I'll speak to that being on a corner lot because when you were saying that number could potentially be twice that, because the lower right hand number.
Yeah.
Because you said it was your frontage and the side divided by 2. Is that so potentially that could be double?
Nope, that's reflected in that 89.
Okay, so
that like that lot, for example, is 75-foot frontage with 100 and I think that one had an alley, so that was 140 deep instead of 150.
Okay, so it would actually in reality a lot of times be higher with a lot of the lots then. Okay, and why? I mean, I guess from my perspective, do I drive on the road more than anybody else? Because they're gonna drive past my house to go to their house. You know, why not just, we got this $12 million, we got this many residents, let's just divide it up even.
That's the way it used to be.
That's the way it should be.
The 100 whatever in front of the house is what you got assessed. And like
Instead
Jack
of
and Jack said,
penalizing the guy in the corner when
Yeah.
everybody else is using the road as much as the guy in the corner is. Or the
That's
gal
how we
in the corner.
adjusted the corner lots. Was that whole block paid for the side alleys on half of the lot.
You just divided it evenly, yeah.
who ascertained to come up with the fact that it had to be this other way? Was it the commission or was it you guys?
My understanding is that's how it was done in 2007, and the data seems to, we looked at some of the assessments that are coming off, and these two parcels, a 75-foot standard lot, had $200 and some remaining for this last payment, and the 75-foot corner lot had $300 and some. So the corner lot was assessed more.
Well, we've got a whole lot more than that. And we live in a big old house.
That's
So
just
that
my
number is
example,
not-
that's why it came that way, that supported the information that was given to us to say that corner lots are typically assessed frontage plus side divided by 2.
That number for the corner lot, because that's what I know, has got to be kind of a realistic number, because that's not.
See,
I
can't understand it, like even Cody said, my neighbor, why should it cost, he drives down the same street I do, why should he get by for less? Just because there's gotta be a street going that way?
I don't have an answer for you. We can keep asking the question, but I'm unfortunately not gonna have an answer. I can only state how I've been told that it's been done previously, and likely how it would be done again.
Yeah, well, things were run pretty loose here for a few years, and, I guess I was not aware of this, because I used to be on the commission, and at that time, it's just exactly the way Jack said, worry about the piece in front of you, everybody's paying the same per foot.
Well, again, I just want to remind everyone, this is a starting point tonight to get input from the citizens, you know, and if we have to go back and take a look at how everything's calculated, that's on the table basically. So that's data points that we have to take and consider. And I'd like the way that Cody says it, because, you know, having a commercial lot that's a corner lot and a residential that's a corner lot, if I paid just as a person, divided it up, it wouldn't be fair to the rest of you folks. So, you know, there's a lot of data, and collecting information tonight I think is an important part of that. So this isn't hard and fast as to how this calculation will be. I think the commission will have to get together now after getting this input, having some more meetings, and then I think that we will sit down and try to figure out the most equitable. And Jack, thank you for sharing. We tried to go back and find, you know, how it was calculated the last time, and we just haven't been able to find that in our records. So we might be picking your ear a little bit to say, you know, how this was done, and getting that information. That might be some more information that we can use for the future calculations. So what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. All the input we can get from you will help us, and it'll just help you in the end.
We just have to remember that we have a wide range of lots in Hillsboro, from 150 to 50. No matter how you do it, there's going to be somebody that's not happy. Just we got to remember that, and we have to kind of find common ground because of that. So we hope we can.
If everybody gets charged the same amount per foot, there shouldn't be any worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, then you might argue I got a 50-foot lot and that guy has a 150-foot lot.
What about it?
Well, I might argue then, why do I have to pay so much? I only got a 50-foot lot.
Well,
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, Chuck, you're going to have that. You're going to have people that'll come in here and they'll say that.
why would they though? Because if everybody pays the same per foot, there's no argument there. It's a moot point.
Okay, well, you beat the drum for that, and I don't think we'll have anybody that'll complain then if everybody's on the same page.
It's quite evident, I think, Paul, that what Buster and Jack did, it's held, I said Jack, but it's held, John. But I think it's been okay since, what, 2007, did you say?
I think so.
I think that sounds to me like it's been tried and true method that's worked pretty well, don't you, for 15 years, so.
Yeah, so now we've already got two arguments, because you're saying
No, I know.
that's good, and they're saying that's what I mean,
Yeah.
is we're gonna have both sides of it. You said that's tried and true, and Chuck says we should just charge everybody the same, so, you know, it's been the conversation that we have to have.
Absolutely, because why should
Yeah.
anyone else get by for less than me? Just because you got another
I might add though, that we had everything done and explained how we divided it out. We had a meeting, anybody can come in and complain. We had no complaints. Nobody came to the last hearing and said, whatever. Once we got it explained how we jockeyed the total cost.
And Jack, I think that, you know, Dave, Ashley, and I, and Jim would like to have coffee with you and kind of explore how you did it the last time. And that'll be for the next meeting, another alternative way that we can take and calculate it out and present that to the citizens. So we'll be in touch.
Could you buy a beer?
Sure, I'll buy a beer. Yeah, we might have to wait a month for a brewed one, but I'll buy a beer in between. That's legal, right?
What?
Buying a beer for one of my constituents. Is there anything else? Is there anything else that you'd like to raise up so that we can prep another session here? And I just would like to, before we get to that point, thank everybody that's out there on streaming live, you know, for the questions and.
So somewhere along the line, the feed went down. Mark was messaging me. That's why it was popping up, because I was trying to get it to go back up. But I did press record at that time, and Mark is going to try to piece it together. So for anybody that was watching, if somebody says anything to you guys, we apologize. We're still trying to figure out all of this stuff. So But Mark Forsyth is gonna piece everything together and get it up tomorrow so that people that were watching and missed the second part of this presentation, that they'll be able to still see it. So if you guys know anybody that was watching and then got cut off, please tell them we are very, very sorry, and it will be up tomorrow, hopefully.
On the website.
On the Your Live event,
Yep.
yep.
Can I ask a question? Is there anybody here that can figure out how much this is gonna cost me?
Right this very moment, you heard
Well,
all the
It says I
conversation?
have 5 lots on my real estate taxes.
You need the footage.
She's on a
We
corner.
first need to find
I'm on a
out what
corner.
kind of footage you have.
Yep.
Do you have a
I'm
100 foot?
150.
150?
It would probably be around 100.
Yeah, because you had estimated, what'd you say, 100 and what for a 100 foot?
If
102?
it was a 100-foot corner, I think it was 103 to 105.
Well, would it just be double what the 75 was then, right? She got 150?
Well, do you have 150 front footage or 150 on a corner lot?
Both.
150 on a
Even
corner.
150 both ways.
It'll cost you a few bucks.
Oh, yeah.
You're 150 east and west, but how about north and south? That's where your garage is, that's not 150.
She's got 150 foot frontage.
Yeah,
On a 150-foot corner as well?
yeah.
So yeah, then if the equation were to stay as the example shows here, it would be the 150 plus 150, which would be 300 divided by 2. So you'd be paying for 150, so it would be double of what the 75-foot standard lot is. So it could be 124 a month.
That's why we were talking about just trying to divide it up amongst frontage instead of frontage and depth and dividing it by 2.
And that one works out.
Which it's still gonna be more than that, but.
Well, yeah, that one, if you went frontage only, she's gonna pay 150 feet as well.
Right, yeah, but she wouldn't have that 75 feet off from the backside too. Because on this, you would have 150 plus 75 because of the 150 foot
No,
depth.
you would have the 150 on the front, 150 on the side, so you have 300 of frontage.
Oh, divided by 2, yes.
Divided by 2, so you're back to 150. Which,
Right.
if it's 150 of just frontage, or if it's 150 and 150 corner, it'd be
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So
And
that,
to
so
be
that,
honest, that would be more, the 62 a month would then be,
the-
70 something a month, because now all the frontage only lots are having to accommodate the extra pavement on all the side lots.
Yeah,
So-
it
the
was
short answer, I think, for your question is that we've got a couple different ways that were raised tonight about how to take and figure out the cost. And so that we'll take all that information and go back and calculate again. And in the next meeting, we'll take and put those out for everybody to weigh, which way they would like to go with it. But we can't give you an answer tonight because you heard a couple different ways of doing the calculation. So let us do all those calculations that come out tonight, and we come back and have another meeting, and you can ask that question, and hopefully we'll have, probably the way it sounds, 3 different ways that the calculations work out. And then that gives you a choice as citizens, which way you'd like to go.
My only comment is, as a senior citizen on a fixed income, this could really hurt me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really bad.
Right.
Like, do the houses for sale?
Not that we're against progress, howsoever.
Right.
Okay, and I guess my thought would be, instead of just saying, let's have another meeting, potentially have the city do another questionnaire, and then we can work with you to get you whatever maps or exhibits, but if we don't have any input or different direction, the next meeting wouldn't be any different than this one.
Right.
So,
Yep, so we'll take and work with you to get those maps sent out in the next utility bill, and then,
well,
Yeah, we have time left on.
okay, so the following one, and then that gives us a chance to have a meeting after that, and then we will set a second out if we have.
and to do another project-specific questionnaire about assessments or what, so we get some guidance if we're not gonna just do the how it's traditionally been done.
So I think we got a lot of
Right,
ideas.
that's true, yeah. Yeah, 'cause
Okay,
potentially-
thank you. Yep, and we're taking and closing out the town hall meeting here, and thanks for everybody coming.
Yes, no, yeah. Yeah, I was,